Hello, this is the Power of Peer Support and Self-Help Services at CMHA. My name is Keely Phillips. The next couple of minutes is designed to provide an introduction to peer support and to self-help services. To begin with, we're going to talk about what is peer support, including who are peer supporters, what does peer support look like, and what are some of the benefits people get out of accessing peer support. Next, I'm going to talk about self-help specific services and what recovery looks like for people accessing self-help services. Finally, we'll talk about how you can connect with self-help. The next slide is my coworker Alan Strong talking about the value and power of peer support.
It's about people who have a shared experience of mental health, who've experienced the mental health system, who come together to offer each other support, encouragement, we share resources. But the fundamental principle is we're doing it because we know what it's like to have a mental health issue. It's that common bond, that common experience that brings us together. It's being able to find somebody who gets it, who understands you, and can provide a place to feel safe, to speak your truth. It's having somebody who can walk beside you and help guide you through getting back on your feet again. It's a place where you can learn about getting on with the business of living from people who've been there. So everyone that works at the Self-Help Alliance, we've all been there. We've all experienced mental health issues. We've either been in hospital, we've experienced suicidal thoughts, some of us have attempted, but the common experience of all the staff is we've all been there. We know what it's like. And that's what makes us different. We've been there and we're open about it. Having that experience of knowing what it's like to be depressed to the point where you don't want to live anymore. Or knowing what it's like to be tormented by voices, but not knowing how to tell somebody that, or if somebody would understand. We provide the opportunity for people to feel understood because we've been there. That's what it is. That's the power of peer support. Being in a group of other folks who've experienced mental health issues really does help address the issue of stigma in a number of ways. For me, the first way is finding out you're not alone. There are other people who've been there who've experienced the same things. So you find out there's a community of other people. The second thing I think is helpful is that you can also learn from others about how to deal with the business of living with a mental health issue. You start to find out how I can get through the day, how I can get through the week, how I can start to deal with folks who may not understand. Because I know I'm part of a larger community. I don't have to go this alone. And for me, that's really I think the most powerful way of dealing with the stigma and the discrimination that comes with having a mental health issue is finding out there are hundreds, maybe thousands of other people who are just like me, who are struggling with the same things, and being in a group of other people that talk about it gives me the strength and can give me information to get through the day to deal with some of that stuff. I'm not doing this by myself. And that's the power of group. That's the power of peer support.
So who are peer supporters? Peer supporters are people who have actively and personally encountered a mental health or substance use issue and intentionally share their lived experience and their recovery journey as part of their role. It's important to note that this is different from people who may be working in other parts of the mental health or addiction system and whom may have also experienced mental health or addiction issues, but are not required to and trained to share their lived experience as part of their role. Peer supporters are people who are intentionally trained and hired to use their lived experience as a means of helping people. Through peer support, peer supporters provide a different type of support, providing connection and nurturing the hope necessary for recovery. Research has demonstrated that peer supporters provide an authentic empathy and validation that's sometimes not offered by other mental health providers. So what does peer support look like? Peer support is the thoughtful sharing of relevant lived experience, or what we like to refer to as intentional use of self. Peer support is not telling one's story over and over again. There is a time and a place for recovery stories, and we often will support people in crafting and telling their recovery stories, but that's not specific to what peer support is. Peer support is walking beside someone in their recovery and helping them access and make choices that improve their quality of life. Peer support is not therapy or case management. Peer support is sharing coping strategies. We like to focus on finding the shared experience with an individual and sharing strategies that have worked for us or that we've seen work with other people. Peer support is not giving advice, and we try to stay away from using terms like should when working with individuals. Peer support is a relationship built on trust and mutuality, and it is not using clinical terms or other language that can disconnect. We like to always use person-centered language when working in peer support. Peer support is about helping another person move on with their life and to recover. Peer support is an evidence-based practice, meaning that there is a wealth of evidence from studies indicating that peer support is valuable and helps people in their recovery. The next slide is going to take you through some of the evidence of how peer support helps individuals. Studies tell us that accessing peer support leads to a reduction in symptoms, decreased substance use, development of coping and interpersonal skills, people feeling more empowered and hopeful, improves daily functioning and quality of life, improves social functioning and expanding social networks, fewer and shorter hospitalizations, and a reduced need for intensive mental health services, which saves the healthcare system money. Increased satisfaction with treatment and better communication with care providers. This is by no means an extensive list of all of the benefits of peer support. Some other benefits have included the adoption of healthy behaviors, increased self-efficacy, increased goal setting and recovery planning, and increased medication adherence. Additionally, peer supporters are able to connect with difficult to engage individuals, leading to increased service utilization. Self-help services. Self-help provides services offered by people who have experienced a mental health or addiction issue for people who've experienced a mental health or addiction issue. We believe that recovery is possible. Our services operate out of 3 sites, in Kitchener at 67 King Street, in Guelph at 147 Wyndham Street, and in Cambridge at 9 Wellington Street. All of our sites operate on a walk-in model, meaning that no registration is required in order for individuals to come in and access a group. All individuals accessing our services are required to follow our code of conduct. So when I say that we believe recovery is possible, what do I mean by that? Well, at self-help, we believe that recovery is defined by the individual. And so this might not be a fit for absolutely everyone who accesses our services. However, after talking with people who access our service, we have found that in general, people are working on one or more of these areas. Recovery skills, which include things like improving knowledge of mental health and addiction issues, improving ability to cope with distress, making choices that improve quality of life, and setting and working towards goals. Recovery identity, which would include improving a sense of hope, improving self-esteem, and seeing themselves as more than an illness or diagnosis, and identifying what are the ways in which a person is unique. Recovery relationships, which would include knowledge of healthy relationships, improving relationships with family and friends, improving how people communicate with family, friends, and service providers, learning about setting boundaries, and expanding social networks. And finally, recovery communities. A lot of people who come to self-help say that being at self-help gives them a sense of belonging. People also have told us that recovery communities means feeling connected, the ability to trust other people, participation in meaningful activities, and knowing how to access services and supports that they need. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, there's a lot of things that people work on when they come into self-help. This slide demonstrates some of the benefits of accessing self-help services. So we ask people on surveys what areas they work on and to what extent they're better in the areas that they worked on. And what we found is that 96% of people who work on improving their knowledge of mental health and addiction issues do so. 93% of people who work on making choices that improve their quality of life report being better able to do that. 93% of people also report that they're improving their skills related to staying alive. 92% seeing themselves as more than their diagnosis. We also asked people about hospital visits, and we found that 78% of people who worked on decreasing hospital admissions were successful at doing so. 74% of people who worked on lessening the symptoms of a mental health issue that they experience were able to do so, and 71% of people decreased their substance use. So a little bit more specifics about the types of services that we offer at Self-Help. Self-Help offers both peer support and recovery groups. And as I mentioned before, all of our groups are free and open, meaning that there's no registration required. People can, after a time of accessing our service, sign up to be a member with us, but it's not specifically required in order to access groups. Member schedule varies by month and by site. There are different groups at our Guelph site than, say, our Kitchener site. Schedules are posted on our website and on Facebook. We do have evening groups and weekend groups, and staff and volunteers also offer one-to-one peer support. In peer support groups, people share their experience, their hope for recovery, and their coping strategies with others who are experiencing similar challenges. Recovery groups are skill-building groups that tend to follow a curriculum or a book. Many of our groups are run by volunteers who have gone through extensive training and mentoring to learn how to facilitate peer support and recovery groups, and also how to provide one-on-one peer support using an intentional peer support model. We also have advocacy, entrepreneurship, and a healing through the arts program called Spark of Brilliance. Our advocacy coordinator assists individuals and families in advocating for their needs in areas such as housing, income supports, employment, treatment, and legal issues. Our entrepreneurship facilitator works with individuals who are interested in self-employment or starting their own business. And Spark of Brilliance promotes healing, recovery, and discovery through the expressive arts. Spark of Brilliance workshops are open to people living with mental health issues or addiction issues and their supportive allies. Spark of Brilliance has its own calendar that can be found on our website. Skills for Safer Living. Skills for Safer Living is a 20-week educational, peer-run group for people who've attempted suicide and people who experience suicide-related ideation and suicide-related behaviors. It does have an intake process and is a closed group. Evidence from the group demonstrates that people who participate in the group reduce their intensity, frequency, and duration of suicide-related behaviors. The Center for Excellence in Peer Support is committed to strengthening the practice of peer support throughout the mental health and addiction system. We do this in two ways. First, by implementing, training, and supporting peer workers working in non-peer services. Second, by engaging in peer-led research and evaluation. To find out more about the Center for Excellence in Peer Support and how we support peer workers, their workplaces, people who are supervising peer workers, and the type of research and evaluation that we conduct, please see our website. Finally, how can you connect with Self-Help? The best way to connect with one of our sites is to come visit us. All of our sites are open during regular business hours, and there's always somebody available to give a tour during these times. Additionally, some of our groups operate during evening or weekend hours. You can find those on our calendars. You can also check out our website at www.self-help.ca, and you can find us on Facebook. If you're a CMHA staff person, the calendars of our monthly groups are posted on the Orchard. That concludes this look at self-help services and peer support.